Hello dear students, today we are going to start class 10th Economics, chapter 2, Sectors of the Indian Economy, part 3. Sectors of the Indian Economy. Students, in this part we will cover introduction, unemployment, how to create more employment, division of sectors as organized and unorganized, how to protect the workers in unorganized sector, sectors in terms of ownership, public and private. Unemployment. Students, in previous part, some of the facts we discussed about unemployment. Let us see some more facts about it. Students, let us recall some issues we discussed in previous part. We have seen primary, secondary and tertiary sectors in India. We have done the comparison between these sectors regarding GDP, regarding employment, and what we found that a remarkable fact about India is that while there has been a change in the share of the three sectors in GDP, a similar shift has not taken in place of employment. As we compared these sectors, we found that GDP has increased, but the generation of employment is not taking place in the same way. Students, even though industrial output or the production of goods went up by 8 times during the period, employment in the industry went up by only 2.5 times. The same applies to tertiary sector as well. While production in the service sector rose by 11 times, employment in the service sector rose less than 3 times. In this way, we have seen the increase in the production, but we have not seen the increase in the generation of employment. Services are less. As a result, more than half of the workers in the country are working in the primary sector, mainly in agriculture, producing only quarter of the GDP. In contrast to this, the secondary and tertiary sectors produce 3/4 of the produce, whereas they employ less than half of the people. Does this mean that workers in agriculture are not producing as much as they could? What it means that there are more people in agriculture than is necessary. So even if we move a few people out, production will not be affected. In other words, workers in agriculture sector are underemployed. Students, what is underemployment? When more than required numbers of people are engaged in productive activities, it is called underemployment. In this case, work done by a person is hidden, and even if the person is removed from employment, the production will remain the same. Therefore, underemployment is also known as disguised unemployment. Students, with the help of one case study, this issue will be clear to you. There is a case of a small farmer, Lakshmi, owning about 2 hectares of unirrigated land, dependent only on rain and growing crops like jowar and arhar. All 5 members of her family work in the plot throughout the year. They have nowhere else to go for work. Only farming is the option with them. You will see that everyone is working. None remains idle, but in actual fact, their labor effort gets divided. Each one is doing some work, but no one is fully employed. This is the situation of underemployment, where people are apparently working but all of them are made to work less than their potential. This kind of underemployment is hidden in contrast to someone who does not have a job and is clearly visible as unemployed. Hence, it is also called disguised unemployment. So, students, here people are working more than the required numbers, and if they will be removed, the production will be not affected. So, this kind of unemployment is known as disguised unemployment, and in rural areas, mostly it can be seen in agriculture field. How to create more employment? Students, now supposing a landlord Sukhram comes and hires one or two members of the family to work on his land. Lakshmi's family is now able to earn some extra income through wages. Since you do not need 5 people to look after that small plot, 2 people moving out does not affect production on their farm. In the above example, or the example we have seen, 2 people may move to work in a factory. Once again, the earning of the family would increase and they would also continue to produce as much from their land. If all will be engaged in the same work where there is no requirement, there will be no profit. They should be engaged in other work so that they can increase their income. There are lakhs of farmers like Lakshmi in India. This means that even if we remove a lot of people from agricultural sector and provide them with proper work elsewhere, agricultural production will not suffer. The incomes of the people who take up other work would increase the total family income. Students, the underemployment can also happen in other sectors. For example, there are thousands of casual workers in the service sector in urban areas who search for daily employment. They are employed as painters, plumbers, repair persons, and others doing odd jobs. Many of them don't find work every day. Similarly, we see other people of the service sector on the streets pushing a cart or selling something where they may spend the whole day but earn very little. They are doing this work because they do not have better opportunities. So there is need to increase opportunities for them. But how to increase more employment? Students, many people are facing the problem of underemployment. Many are unemployed. So what should be done for them so that they can get jobs? For this, construction of dams should be there, provision of basic facilities, cheap credit, diversification of agriculture, promotion of local industries, improvement in education and health facilities, tourism should be promoted, right to work. Students, these steps should be taken so that we can create more employment for the people. Students, take the case of Lakshmi where her 2 hectare plot of unirrigated land, the government can spend some money or banks can provide a loan to construct a well for her family to irrigate the land. Lakshmi will then be able to irrigate her land and take a second crop, wheat, during the Rabi season. Let us suppose that 1 hectare of wheat can provide employment to 2 people for 50 days. Application and harvesting. So, 2 more members of the family can be employed in her own field. Now, suppose a new dam is constructed and canals are dug to irrigate many such farms. This could lead to a lot of employment generation within the agricultural sector itself, reducing the problem of underemployment. In this way, dam construction can be helpful for the farmers. They can do irrigation, they can increase their work in farming. Now, provision of basic facilities. Students, now suppose Lakshmi and other farmers produce much more than before. They would also need to sell some of this. For this, they may be required to transport their products to a nearby town. If the government invests some money in transportation and storage of crops or makes better rural roads that mini trucks reach everywhere, several farmers like Lakshmi who now have access to water can continue to grow and sell these crops. This activity can provide productive employment to not just farmers but also others such as those in services like transport or trade. So students, basic facilities are also needed to create more employment. Cheap credit. Cheap credit is also helpful in the generation of more employment. Students, Lakshmi need is not confined to water alone. To cultivate the land, she also needs seeds, fertilizers, agricultural equipments, and pump sets to draw water. Being a poor farmer, she cannot afford many of these, so she will have to borrow money from moneylenders and pay a high rate of interest. If the local bank gives her credit at a reasonable rate of interest, she will be able to buy all these in time and cultivate her land. This means that along with water, we also need to provide cheap agricultural credit to the farmers for farming to improve. It means that cheap credit will be also helpful for the farmers. They can purchase their agriculture input easily and they can do cultivation and other works. Now students, diversification of agriculture. As farmers are growing wheat, rice, pulses, so there is need to increase the production, but along with that they can do horticulture, pisciculture, sericulture, apiculture. They can grow vegetables and agricultural products like potatoes, sweet potato, rice, wheat, tomato, fruits, which can be sold in outside markets. This will improve employment in industries located in semi-rural areas and not necessarily a large urban centers. Students, so in this way they can grow different kind of crops to increase their income. They can sell it in the market and get money. Another way by which we can tackle this problem is to identify, promote and locate industries and services in semi-rural areas where a large number of people may be employed. For instance, suppose many farmers decide to grow arhar and pulse crops. Setting up a dal mill to produce mill to procure and process these and sell in the cities is one such example. Opening a cold storage could give an opportunity for farmers to store their products like potatoes and onions and sell them when the price is good. So students, in this way they can increase their income. So there is need to set up the industries in local areas. Improvement in education and health facilities is also responsible for the generation of employment. Do you know that in India there are about 200 million children in the school going age group? Out of this, only about two-thirds are attending schools. The rest are not. They may be at home or many of them may be working as child laborers. If these children are to attend schools, we will require more buildings, more teachers, and other staff. A study conducted by the Planning Commission estimates that nearly 20 lakh jobs can be created in the education sector alone. Similarly, if we are to improve the health situation, we need many more doctors, nurses, health workers, etc. to work in rural areas. These are some ways by which jobs would be created and would also be able to address the important aspects of development talked about in chapter 1, that was development. So, in this way, we can create more jobs by opening new schools, new hospitals. We can create many jobs for the people. Tourism. Every state or region has potential for increasing the income and employment for the people in that area. It could be tourism or regional craft industry or new services like IT. Some of these would require proper planning and support from the government. For example, the same study by Planning Commission says if tourism as a sector is improved, every year we can give additional employment to more than 35 lakh people. The next step we can take, that is right to work. Government policies are also helpful in the generation of employment. We must realize that some of the suggestions discussed here would take a long time to implement. For the short term, we need some quick measures. Recognizing this, the central government in India recently made a new implementing the right to work in 200 districts of India. It is called National Rural Employment Generation Act, in short NREGA. It was launched in 2005. Under NREGA 2005, all those who are able to and are in need of work are guaranteed 100 days of employment in a year by the government. If the government fails in its duty to provide employment, it will give unemployment allowances to the people. The types of work that would in future help to increase the production from land will be given preference under the Act. So in this way, right to work is also helpful in the generation of employment. Division of sectors as organized and unorganized. Students, as we have seen the classification of the sectors, in previous parts we discussed about the classification based on economic activities, that is primary, secondary and tertiary sectors we have seen. Now this classification is on the basis of working condition. Different people are working, but their working conditions are different. Now let us examine another way of classifying activities in the economy. Students, here we will take these two case studies. One is the case study of Kanta. Kanta works in an office. She attends her office from 9:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. She gets her salary regularly at the end of every month. In addition to the salary, she also gets provident fund as per the rules laid down by the government. She also gets medical and other allowances. Kanta does not go to office on Sundays. This is a paid holiday. When she joined work, she was given an appointment letter stating all the terms and conditions of work. Let us see the next case, that is the case of Kamal. Kamal is Kanta's neighbor. He is a daily wage laborer in a nearby grocery shop. He goes to the shop at 7:30 in the morning and the work till 8 p.m. in the evening. He gets no other allowances apart from his wages. He is not paid for the days he does not work. He has therefore no leave or paid holidays, nor was he given any formal letter saying that he has been employed in the shop. He can be asked to leave any time by his employer. So here we have seen these two case studies. Now, what is the difference in these two working conditions? Let us see. Students, Kanta works in the organized sector. Organized sector covers those enterprise or places of work where the terms of employment are regular and therefore people have assured work. They are registered by the government and have to follow its rules and regulations, which are given in various laws such as Factories Act, Minimum Wages Act, Payment of Gratuity Act, Shops and Establishment Acts, etc. It is called organized because it has some formal processes and procedures. Some of these people may not be employed by anyone but may work on their own, but they too have to register themselves with the government and follow the rules and regulations. Workers in the organized sector enjoy security of employment. They are expected to work only a fixed of hours, a fixed number of hours. If they work more, they have to be paid overtime by the employer. They also get several other benefits from the employer. What are these benefits? Let us discuss. They get paid leave, payment during holidays, provident fund, gratuity, etc. They are supposed to get medical benefits, and under the laws, the factory manager has to ensure facilities like drinking water and a safe working environment. When they retire, these workers get pensions as well. So this is the condition of Kanta. What we have seen, let us point out in the case of Kanta, as she works in organized sector. So what benefits the people are getting, those they work in organized sector? Terms of employment are regular, follow rules and regulations of Factory Act, Minimum Wages Act, Payment of Gratuity Act, etc. Employees register themselves with the government. Security of work, work for a fixed number of hours. If work more, paid overtime. Get benefits like paid leave, payment during holidays, provident fund, gratuity, etc. Get medical benefits, drinking water, safe working environment. So here we have seen some points regarding organized sector workers. These kind of benefits they are getting by working there. Now let us see the next case of Kamal. Let us discuss his working condition. In contrast, Kamal works in the unorganized sector. The unorganized sector is characterized by small and scattered units which are largely outside the control of the government, as it is not registered by the government. There are rules and regulations, but these are not followed. Jobs here are low paid and often not regular. There is no provision for overtime, paid leave, holidays, leave due to sickness, etc. Employment is not secure. People can be asked to leave without any reason. Where there is less work, such as during some seasons, some people may be asked to leave. A lot also depends. Here, students, the job depends on the whims of the employer. This sector includes a large number of people who are employed on their own doing small jobs, such as selling on the streets or doing repair work. Similarly, farmers work on their own and hire laborers as and when they require. So students, here we have seen the case of Kamal. Let us point out what is the main feature of the unorganized sector. It is small scattered units outside the control of government, rules and regulations not followed. Jobs are low paid and often not regular. No provision for overtime, paid leave, holidays for leave due to sickness. Employment is not secure. They may be told to leave the job anytime. Lot of them are employed on their own doing small jobs. Now students, here we have seen the workers of organized sector, they enjoy the facilities, but in contrast the workers of unorganized sector, they face many problems in their on their workplace. So how can we protect them from their problems? How to protect the workers in unorganized sector? So students, unorganized sector people are suffering. The organized sector offers jobs that are the most sought after, but the employment opportunities in the organized sector have been expanding very slowly. It is also common to find many organized sector enterprises in the unorganized sector. They adopt such strategies to evade taxes and refuse to follow laws that protect laborers. As a result, a large number of workers are forced to enter the unorganized sector jobs, which pay a very low salary. They are often exploited and not paid a fair wage. Their earnings are low and not regular. These jobs are not secure and have no other benefits. As people are getting many benefits in organized sector, but there are very less jobs. So forcefully people they have to move to unorganized sector. There they are getting low paid jobs. Since the 1990s, it is also common to see a large number of workers losing their jobs in the organized sector. These workers are forced to take up jobs in the unorganized sector with low earnings. Hence, besides the need for more work, there is also a need for protection and support of the workers in the unorganized sector. But who are the people those they suffer? Who are these vulnerable people? These vulnerable people can be seen in rural areas, urban areas, and SC, ST people are suffering a lot in unorganized sector. In rural areas, the unorganized sector mostly comprise of landless agricultural laborers, small and marginal farmers, sharecroppers and artisans such as weavers, blacksmiths, carpenters and goldsmiths. Nearly 80% of rural households in India are in small and marginal farmers category. How can we protect them? These farmers need to be supported through adequate facility for timely delivery of seeds. Students, needs is written here. Just do the correction. That should be seeds, SEEDS. Seeds, agriculture inputs, credit, storage facilities and marketing outlets. So if farmers they will get their inputs, they can do more work and they can be protected. Let us see the case of urban areas. In urban areas, organized sector comprises mainly of workers in small scale industry, casual workers in construction, trade and transport, etc., and those who work as street vendors, head load workers, garment makers, rag pickers, etc. They are also facing the problem. So how they can be protected? Small scale industry also needs government supports for producing raw material and marketing of output. The casual workers in both rural and urban areas need to be protected. So they can be also protected by the government support. Let us see the problem of SC/ST people. We also find that majority of workers from scheduled caste, tribes, and backward communities find themselves in the unorganized sector. Besides getting the regular and low paid work, these workers also face social discrimination. They are discriminated, so how they can be protected? Protection and support to the unorganized sector workers is thus necessary for both economic and social development. So they need the equality, and equality should be promoted for these people. Now students, the next classification is on the basis of ownership. On the basis of ownership, the sectors can be divided into two parts, that is public and private sectors. Students, on the basis of who owns assets and is responsible for the delivery of services, on that basis, we can divide the sectors in public and private. In the public sector, the government owns most of the assets and provides all the services. In the private sector, ownership of assets and delivery of services is in the hands of private individuals or companies. Railways or post office is an example of the public sector, whereas companies like Tata Iron and Steel Company Limited or Reliance Industries Limited are privately owned. Students, activities in the private sector are guided by the motive to earn profits. To get such services, we have to pay money to these individuals and companies. The purpose of the public sector is not just to earn profits. Government raise money through taxes and other ways to meet expenses on the services rendered by it. Modern day government spend on a whole range of activities. Students, government is giving many facilities to us in public sector. There are several things needed by the society as a whole, but which the private sector will not provide at reasonable cost. So student, public sector provides many facilities to the people at cheap rate. It is accessible to everyone. Let us point out some features of the public sector. It is controlled and managed by the government. The main aim of this sector is public welfare. The sector provides basic facilities like education, health, food and security to the people. For example, BSNL, the post office, railways, these are some examples of public sector. Government raise money through taxes and other ways to meet expenses on these services rendered by it. Government takes some taxes from us to give these facilities. Government must spend on provision of health and educational facilities. So students, these are some features of public sector. Let us see the features of private sector. It is controlled and managed by an individual or group of individuals. The main aim of this sector is to earn maximum profit. The sector provides consumer goods to the people, for example, Tata Iron and Steel Company, Reliance. To get services, we have to pay money. Is unable to provide several things needed by the people at reasonable rates. So students, for the development of the country, public sector is playing a vital role because it is accessible to everyone and common people can also afford these services. Public sector is also playing a vital role in the development, but the services are it is far away from the reach of common people. So public facilities are helpful for the common people as it is given for the welfare of the people. Students, Also, private sector also collecting money from thousands of people who use these facilities. Even if they do provide these things, they would charge a high rate for their use. Examples are construction of roads, bridges, railways, harbors, generating electricity, providing irrigation through dams, etc. This government have to undertake such heavy spending and ensure that these facilities are available for everyone. Students, if these services will be in the hands of private sector, it will be not accessible to the poor people. They will charge high money on that, so it will be not in the hands of poor people. So students, public facilities are very much helpful in the development of the country, of the people. So students, test your progress. What are the advantages of working in the organized sector? Why are large number of workers are forced to enter unorganized sector? How would income and employment increase in if farmers are provided with irrigation and marketing facilities? Using examples from your area, compare and contrast the activities and functions of public and private sectors. So students, here some questions are there, and as it is the last part of the chapter, so once we will see the summary of the chapter. In this chapter, we have looked at ways of classifying economic activities into some meaningful groups. One way of doing this is to extreme whether the activity relates to the primary, secondary or tertiary sectors that we discussed on the basis of economic activities. We have seen the GDP, the comparison of GDP in the three sectors, employment in the three sectors, historical change we have seen. We have also seen the classification on the basis of working condition as organized and unorganized sector, and we have also seen the classification on the basis of ownership, that is public and private sectors we discussed here. So in public private sectors, we have seen that the government provides many facilities to the people, and the government must spend on these providing health and education facilities for all is very much important. We have discussed some of these issues, that running proper schools and providing quality education, particularly elementary education, is the duty of the government. Similarly, we know that nearly half of India's children are malnourished and quarter of them are critically ill. We have read about infant mortality rates. In few states it is very high, like Odisha and Madhya Pradesh, that we discussed in previous chapter. Government also needs to pay attention to aspects of human development such as availability of safe drinking water, housing facilities for the poor and food and nutrition. It is also the duty of the government to take care of the poorest and most ignored regions of the country through increased spending in such areas. So students, in this way, all we discussed in this chapter, and I hope you understood and easily you can give the answers of these questions. Thank you.